The world must never forget that Africa is the victim of two colossal and compounded injustices. First, the profound impact of colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade. The roots stretch back centuries, and the bitter fruit continues to affect Africans and people of African descent to this day.
A storm is raging through the corridors of power in Europe. Once hailed as masters of diplomacy, the European Union now finds itself standing on its knees, pleading, scrambling, and begging for a second chance. Not from the United States, not from China, but from the very nations it once patronized and exploited for centuries, Africa. And at the center of this geopolitical earthquake stands a young, unyielding revolutionary, Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. Gone are the days when the West dictated the terms. Today, the tables have turned. As Western economies buckle under the weight of energy crises, inflation, social unrest, and job losses, they are coming face to face with a new reality. Without Africa, there is no Europe. In an unprecedented diplomatic breakdown, the European Union has dispatched not one, but multiple envoys to West Africa, begging to restore relations with Burkina Faso and its Sahel allies. These aren't diplomatic missions. They are desperate rescue operations to salvage what's left of European economic stability. From Macron's personal calls for forgiveness to EU emissaries quietly landing in Ouagadougou, the message is loud and clear. Europe is crumbling, Africa is rising, and Traoré isn't interested. This is not just the story of Burkina Faso. This is the unraveling of Western neo-colonial dominance and the rise of a new Africa, forged in fire, led by warriors, and grounded in dignity. This is the story they never wanted you to hear. France is on fire, literally and economically. With over 44,000 jobs lost in just months and thousands of businesses shuttered, the French economy is bleeding out. From manufacturing to agriculture, from tech to textiles, sectors that once flourished now sit in silence. Why? Because the lifeblood of these industries, raw materials from Africa, has been cut off. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have closed the doors. And this is not some accidental disruption. This is deliberate, strategic, calculated. After centuries of plunder, Africa has simply said, no more. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, together with his Sahel counterparts, made it clear. Foreign powers will no longer extract African wealth without consequences. The era of free exploitation is over. And Europe? They didn't see it coming. They underestimated the resolve of these new leaders. They thought a few sanctions, some diplomatic pressure, maybe even veiled military threats would be enough to scare the African nations back into submission. They were wrong. Traoré did not flinch. He looked Europe dead in the eye and said, "We are not interested." Now, the consequences are unfolding. Without uranium from Niger, energy prices are skyrocketing in France. Without gold and phosphates from Burkina Faso, key European industries are halting production. Entire logistics networks that depended on Africa's abundant resources are now facing catastrophic breakdown. The West built its wealth on the backs of African nations. Now, those backs have turned, and Europe is collapsing. The fall of economic might often begins in diplomatic desperation. First, they sent an EU envoy, dressed in official robes, carrying neatly typed letters of reconciliation. The mission: convince Ibrahim Traoré to reopen diplomatic channels. The result: rejected. Next, they tried a subtler tactic. A woman, supposedly to appeal to a sense of softness, understanding, and compassion. She came bearing gifts of negotiation, of promises of partnership, but again, rejected. Even French President Emmanuel Macron himself reached out personally. In a moment of humiliating irony, he pleaded with Traoré, asking to forget the past and focus on building a fresh future together. But Traoré didn't forget the past. He remembered the blood spilled, the resources stolen, the sovereignty crushed. His response was swift and final. We are not interested. And how could they be? For decades, France and the broader EU treated African nations as colonies, even after independence. They dictated policies, controlled central banks, installed puppet leaders. And now, with Africa finally waking up, the West wants to shake hands and play nice? Too little. Too late. These diplomatic overtures are not signs of peace. They are signs of panic. Behind the scenes, France's energy companies are gasping. Automotive giants are cutting production. Pharmaceutical factories are laying off workers. The media spins it as inflation or supply chain issues. But the truth is that Europe is losing access to Africa's treasure chest. And Burkina Faso, it's not begging for aid. It's not asking for trade deals. It's building African alliances with Mali, Niger, Guinea, Algeria, and even Russia. The game has changed, and Europe is not holding the cards anymore. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, the three Sahel brothers, have become the spine of a new African order. Together, they formed the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, a powerful bloc aimed at removing Western influence and restoring Pan-African sovereignty. These aren't just military governments. They are revolutionary movements backed by their people, by youth, farmers, students, workers, and exiles returning to rebuild. And they are sending a message to the world. Africa will no longer kneel. By cutting off French military presence, nationalizing resource extraction, and building new institutions like the Confederal Bank of the Sahel, the AES is laying down the foundations of true independence. Meanwhile, Burkina Faso is launching massive agricultural reforms, funding mega infrastructure projects, and investing in rural communities neglected by the former elites. Gold revenues, once siphoned by multinationals, are now being redirected into schools, roads, and hospitals. Traoré is not just rejecting France. He is building a new model of African governance, and it's inspiring the continent. From Senegal to South Africa, young Africans are rising in solidarity. Flags of the Sahel states now wave in places they've never been. Protests erupt against foreign military bases. Leaders are being forced to explain their ties to Western powers. This is no longer just about Burkina Faso. This is a continent-wide revolution. And the West is terrified. They thought Africa would never rise. They thought that colonial scars would keep the continent divided, weak, and compliant. But they were wrong. What we are witnessing is the great unraveling of an old world order. The empire built on lies, exploitation, and dependency is crumbling, not because of war, but because of dignity. Because of men like Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who chose principle over profit, patriotism over puppetry. Europe may send 1,000 emissaries. Macron may plead for peace. The EU may offer billions, but they cannot buy back Africa's soul. The streets of Ouagadougou echo with a new rhythm, a rhythm of pride, of resistance, of purpose. The future is no longer written in Brussels or Paris. It's being carved in the red earth of Burkina Faso, the highlands of Mali, and the plains of Niger. A new Africa is rising, and it's not waiting for anyone's permission. So let the West beg. Let them knock on every door. The revolution has begun, and it is unstoppable.